Hi, gang. Anybody there? This is actually take two for me. For the last 6 minutes, I've been speaking apparently only to myself. I see signs of life. Okay, were you waiting for me? Truly, I started on time, and I said that the Facebook layout was different than it normally is, and I had no way of telling whether anyone was watching. I see Diane Moran is there. Hang on 1 second. There we go. All right. Jesse Stein, over? Nothing is over. Okay. Thomas claims he's in Korea as usual, so I know we're in good stead. Okay. Let me wipe the slate clean. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here. I'm sure, like me, you awoke to the sad news of the passing of John Lewis. I only had the privilege of meeting him once, and it was in the Atlanta airport where we shared a short shuttle, a lot of alliteration there, a short shuttle ride together. And I was thrilled to meet him. This goes back to the aftermath of the Obama election. It probably would have been a year or two, maybe 2009, 2010, or 2010, into the Obama administration. You know, he was diagnosed as having pancreatic cancer in December. And when you're dealing with someone of his stature, it's an obituary that is written in anticipation of his passing. It's not as if journalists last night were at their computers and trying to crank on the obituary for John Lewis. At the website, Smerconish.com, I went with the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. Now I'm sitting here and I'm reading Kit Seeley's great obit in the New York Times. And I know we know the story. It just bears repeating, at least a paragraph or two. On March 7, 1965, he led one of the most famous marches in American history. In the vanguard of 600 people demanding the voting rights that they had been denied, Mr. Lewis marched partway across the Edmund Pettus Bridge in Selma, Alabama, into a waiting phalanx of state troopers in riot gear. Ordered to disperse, the protesters silently stood their ground. The troopers responded with tear gas and bullwhips and rubber tubing wrapped in barbed wire. In the melee known as Bloody Sunday, a trooper cracked Mr. Lewis's skull with a billy club, knocking him to the ground, then hit him again when he tried to get up. Televised images of the beating of Mr. Lewis, and by the way, there's like a photograph. Look at this. This is, can I show this to you? Where am I? That's John Lewis. Is that unbelievable? Televised images of the beatings of Mr. Lewis and scores of others outraged the nation and galvanized support for the Voting Rights Act, which President Lyndon Johnson presented to a joint session of Congress 8 days later and signed into law on August 6. A milestone in the struggle for civil rights, the law struck down the literacy tests that black people had been compelled to take before they could register to vote and replaced segregationist voting registrars with federal registrars to ensure that black people were no longer denied the ballot. A remarkable legacy. And an obituary, whether you read this one or the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, take the time, as I will do today, to learn more about the man, because it really is a story that bears repeating. So I will address the passing of John Lewis at the outset of my program today, and then I will move on to the program that I had pre-planned before I went to bed last night, unaware of his passing. If you saw the headline on this Facebook Live, and if it says what I intended it to say, it should have said, "Is the election over?" And by that, I certainly don't mean, is the re-election of President Trump a lock? I mean, is his defeat a certainty? Jason Miller, who is a senior advisor to the president and has a role in the president's campaign, he's no longer at the White House. I think he had been there. But he will be my opening guest. And I have all the data. I have all the data on where the race stands today, according to the polls. And I will highlight, among other things, the fact that 2/3, 64%, but 2/3, let's call it, of Americans say they cannot trust what the president says about the pandemic. or that this week there was a boatload of polling data that was released which shows, it all tells the same story. Ipsos Reuters, Biden by 10. NBC Wall Street Journal, Biden by 11. Quinnipiac, Biden by 15. The Real Clear Politics average, Biden by 8.6. So that's where it stands. And when you get into the states, it tells a similar story in Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and other battleground states. But some of you are saying, doesn't this sound familiar? Isn't this what we were told 4 years ago? I have that data as well. So where were we 4 years ago at this time? NBC Wall Street Journal, Hillary by 5. Washington Post ABC, Hillary by 4. CNN ORC, Hillary by 7. I know that the polls get pilloried from 2016, but the national surveys, as I often say on radio, were really not off the mark. In the end, they had Clinton up by 3. Her margin was 2.1%. When you go to the states, Biden is +8 in Wisconsin. 4 years ago, Hillary was +9. Pennsylvania, Monmouth, Biden is up 13. 4 years ago, NBC Wall Street Journal showed Clinton winning Pennsylvania by 8. Michigan, a recent survey showed Biden up by 11. 4 years ago, it was Clinton winning by 9. And in each of those states, it was a razor-thin margin that enabled, you know the statistic, right? 74,000 votes across those 3 states, and the election would have had a different outcome. USA Today had a good summary paragraph this week about 4 years ago. Of the 104 polls that surveyed voters in these 3 states from August to the election, of the 104, 101 had Clinton winning. 2 were tied. 1 in Pennsylvania showed Trump with a slight lead. Many fell within the margin of error. 15 of them had Clinton up by double digits at some point. So it's a very similar position to where we were 4 years ago, insofar as Trump is on the receiving end of bad polling information. Biden's margin is bigger in most of these instances than Hillary's. So the Trump campaign, of course, will say, and I'm sure Jason Miller is going to say, in fact, I'm going to say it for him. I'm going to lay out all the data ahead of his appearance. They will say, well, it's the same thing. The polls can't be believed. They weren't believed last time. They shouldn't be believed this time. But I will push back and offer the view that it feels different and the data is different. And why does it feel different? And what data am I referring to? A couple of things. The pandemic primarily. I get this whole argument that people lie to pollsters because they don't want to be associated with Trump. They feel like they'll be subject to ridicule and scorn. I'm not going to tell a stranger I'm voting for Donald Trump, yada, yada, yada. I get that. I've been involved in campaigns where that has been a factor. To me, that's a 2 or 3% factor. It's not an 8-point factor. It's not a 10-point factor. And I'll tell you something else. Okay, I understand that you don't want to be honest because it's not cool to be for Donald Trump in certain areas. But why would you lie to ABC and say you cannot trust what he says about the virus? That's different. That's different to me. Something else, the school issue. His insistence on reopening the schools, I think, is harming him with suburban women. And that is a constituency that he can ill afford to lose or lose by the margins that he's losing now. And something else that's unique about the polling data this week, his saving grace had been the economy. But on those crosstabs, on those internal questions, he's now losing to Biden and losing significantly. Here's an example. A CNBC poll shows a majority of voters disapprove of Trump's helping their pocketbook, and by a margin of 10 points nationally, 6 points in the battleground states, they believe Biden will put the middle class first. The pandemic, the moms, the economy. Those are the reasons why I think that the polling data is accurate as of today. As of today. But I get the parallels. I'm going to lay all the data out there and explain exactly where it stands. Anyway, when we finish here, go to Smerconish.com and answer the survey question as to whether you think the election is over. What is today? July 18. July 18. So, rest in peace, John Lewis. The data about where the race stands today. I'm thrilled to have NPR's Nina Totenberg on the program today to talk about what would happen if there were a Supreme Court vacancy between now and the election. I had intended to do this subject before there was news about the health of one of the justices yesterday, and I don't want to appear in poor taste. I'm going to do my best to have this conversation with Nina Totenberg in the abstract and make it clear to the audience that I was already planning to have this dialogue. Here's what I'm taken with. What are we now from the election? 4 months? Less than 4 months? It was 8 months in advance of the 2016 election that Justice Scalia passed away. And you know how that ended. The Republicans in the Senate, Mitch McConnell and company, would not give a hearing to Merrick Garland. And the idea was, and I've got the words of McConnell ready to use on television today, but the idea was that the American people need to have a say in this. You know, the election is close, 8 months. The American people need to have a say in this. Okay, now we're less than 4 months away. God forbid there should be a vacancy. Do the American people need to have a say in this? I mean, that was a huge issue 4 years ago. Remember, the idea that Donald Trump could name the successor to Justice Scalia and therefore keep that vote in the conservative column was a very important factor for voters who came out and supported him, because if Hillary had picked Scalia's successor, then the balance of the court would have flipped. So, and there's an added justification where McConnell says, well, there was Republican control of the Senate and Democratic control of the House, and because of that split, it's different than what the nation faces today. But I'll talk about that issue. D.L. Hughley will be here to talk about his brand new book, which I really enjoyed, had him on radio, and he was great. Surrender White People. It's a book about reparations and race relations. It'll make you laugh and it'll make you cry. There's DL. And finally, Clay Calvert, who is a First Amendment expert from the great state of Florida, will join me. This is sort of an offshoot of the so-called cancel culture stories. I'm still uncomfortable with that brand, that title, but at least you know what I'm talking about. What do you do with a college applicant who's been accepted, an accepted college student who's not yet matriculated, who now, it turns out, there's something in their social history past that is racist? Or maybe not racist, but it's misogynist, or it's otherwise inappropriate. Do you withdraw their acceptance? And what if they're already a student? And what are the First Amendment implications, if any? If it's a private institution, there are none. But there have been a slew of these cases of teens acting badly. And colleges all across the country are confronted now with what do we do? And what do we do now that it's been brought to our attention that so-and-so on a Facebook posting said such and such, or in an Instagram account, or in Snapchat, or whatever the case may be? So, yeah, that's the show. And I'm really excited about it. The 2016 versus 2020 data, I'll go over it with Jason Miller. The Supreme Court situation, Nina Totenberg, my guest. reparations, race relations with D.L. Hughley and Clay Calvert on these rescission cases. And of course, acknowledging the passing of John Lewis. And the survey question is the election over? You can go vote on that at Smerconish.com. Hey, finally, gang, a quick sign based on emoji. How many last night watched the International Space Station? Or is it only me with my family in the backyard? Last night, did any of you watch the International Space Station? A couple of thumbs up is all I'm seeing. Oh, here they come. Oh, okay, maybe there's a delay. Can I just say, this is the coolest thing for which I've been out of the loop. Actually, there have been many cool things that I'm out of the loop on. But if you're not watching this at least one time, you're making a mistake that I made for apparently 20 years. Last night, 9:15 in the backyard, my wife and I and our 3 sons, and it was a long one, probably a good 6 minutes, right in the sky above us. It was a perfect night for viewing. And silently, here is this unmistakable, illuminated, although now we know that's a reflection from the sun, object that flies through the sky. And the funny thing was, as we were watching it, one of my sons was tracking it on the NASA app, and I got to do this on CNN, by the way. I've got to have this conversation on CNN, not today. But he would say, okay, Dad, it is right now over Scranton, Pennsylvania. And I'm like, are you kidding me? It's right there. He's like, Dad, right now it's over Vermont. Dad, right now it is in Maine. I'm still seeing it. Dad, it is now over, Canada. It is amazing. Amazing. I'm tempted to say, and it costs you nothing, but I guess as taxpayers, we paid for it. Hey, you may as well enjoy it. All you need to do is, I'd show you, but I'm using my phone right now. But get this ISS, International Space Station, ISS Spotter app on your phone. And it will tell you what time you can see it in most of the country. And then you go out and you have a good place and you watch and you hope for a clear night. Amazing. Just amazing. A highlight of my summer thus far. A highlight of my summer thus far is getting turned on to the ability to go see the International Space Station in the backyard. One more thing, if I may, somewhere here on my Facebook page are instructions for those, and maybe TC will underscore it. Many of you have said, first of all, that you appreciated last Saturday night's CNN special. Thank you for that. I'm very proud of it. But there are a whole slew of people who said, I didn't watch, and I want to watch. It is available. In fact, on my phone, I have the CNN app downloaded, and I simply went to the CNN app and went to Watch TV, and there it is. So if you missed it, I gave out fake news earlier this week on radio when I said, geez, I don't know if it's posted. It's there. It's not going to remain there probably for another 2 weeks or so. So anyway, stay safe. Thank you for watching. Go vote at the website on the very simple. There's beauty in simplicity. Is the election over? Is the election over? Go vote at Smerconish.com, and I will see you in an hour and 5 minutes on CNN. Thanks, guys. Sorry I was late.